Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series finale of The Sinner. A great season finale, a great episode in general. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we finally have it all laid out. The final pieces are, finally coming together. Everything finally came together. In the aftermath of everything, now Meg knows the entire truth about what's going on, and obviously all the hard physical evidence is gone now. But Meg knows, like, if the word ever gets out, it's like, yeah, this family will get 15 years to life because she looked it up online for everything, and they'd have to pay like a huge fine. And it's like, the thing is, and Meg made it clear last episode, she's doing this because this is all she has. Like, if this all ever comes to the surface, the Muldoon legacy ends with them, because Percy's already gone. At the very least, she can hold on to what's left of her family. And I think that's the sad thing about it. It's like, at the end of the day, all Meg ever wanted to, and tried to do was for her family. She thought they were all trying to do what they thought was best for their family. They just went about it the wrong way, Because the sad thing, it was just one thing after another. We'll kind of get into that because Harry went to visit Don because Don was culpable. He was a part of all of this as well. And Harry wanted him to confess, but he's like, the thing about you cops, you want to hang around, swing around your cuffs and stuff. Like, I don't know why he went on that whole diatribe, almost trying to be like, oh, that's the only way you can bring meaning in your life. It's like, you're a terrible human being. You're mixed up in something terrible. You're mixed up in human trafficking. And you're, judging him, being like, oh, waving around. What are you even talking about, bro? That's just, I'm like, you're guilty of sin. You know you are. You're acting like, oh, he's barking up the wrong tree. And it's like, oh, you just want to fill your life. Because he's trying to justify it by being like, oh, the only reason why you're going this hard in this, about this, is because you want to, you're a cop at your heart. And you just want to arrest somebody. That's all it is. It's like, no, you're part of something terrible. And the fact is, he wants to justify by being like, whatever it is, he wants no part of it. It's just the fact is, I am in the middle of something, but I want to be there for my grandchildren. That's kind of what it is. So it's like, what's already done is done. Me going down for it isn't going to help anybody. It's just, all it's going to do is hurt. So they called the police, and so I'm assuming his wife is in the know about it, or if that was his wife or daughter or whoever, knows about what's going on, or she just knows, oh, some weird guy is in our kitchen. I'm assuming because of the conversation, that person had to have heard what Harry was saying, so they have to know. Not unless that led to some conversations after Harry left. But Lou, the moment Lou drove away, it's like Lou uncuffs him because he's like, no, the fact is, you were right about everything. Novak's bullet came back. He's the one that killed Brandon. And the fact is, I checked the security footage. The night that Percy came in, that footage is gone. And it's the person who was working that night is Josh. And now he skipped town. It's just what hits Lou so hard. It's all of this was under my nose the entire time. These are people, for him, it's the terrible things that's been revealed in his town. It's it never crossed my mind. He's I thought this was a wonderful place that, nothing like that ever happened. But it's for Harry, it's nothing is ever kind of what you think it is, Because it hits Lou even harder because he looks at these people as friends, and it's just a lot of my friends, the people I thought of as friends, are just terrible people, covering up terrible thing after terrible thing. And so they finally let Mike go, and Mike's like, oh, it must feel good to finally do something, instead of lazing about. And I was like, oh, come on, Mike. Lou just did the best that he could, but it's if you had just listened to me from the beginning, we could have avoided all of this. And Lou felt bad. But him and Harry are continuing to work this case the best way that they can. I mean, once again, all the hard evidence is gone. And so he ends up finding out that, because they followed one of the numbers on Vern's phone, because it turns out this whole trafficking operation, the feds are aware of it, but it's the problem of this is a small town thing. It's a part of a bigger pie. So they're going to not really push for anything because they don't want to jeopardize the operation as a whole. So it's they're kind of bitched on this going forward. Because even with the Portland PD, it's yeah, we all got to shut down because this is the feds thing now, so we can't really tamper with it too much. But it's at the heart of this, there was a murder that took place, so that should take some precedent. But Harry got the the number from Vern's phone that's connected to the payphone outside Collins. He goes there, and the lambs are there, and you're like, wait, why are you there? Like, you, like, and I was like, okay, so it is something you are getting paid about. So I guess they were making sure not to tell too much. They like made sure not to say anything, and I guess they were confirming with the Muldoons, like, we didn't see anything about like other elements to this. It's like, we got to look out for each other. Like, we're all some benefits from this. Like, and so going through some permits, they ended up finding out there's an island that the lambs own. But it was like, yeah, like Sean sold it to him for like $10. You're like, what's that about? And there you found one of those little jade statues. I'm assuming jade. I guess I went just by the color of it. But there was a circle and everything. I was like, is that a grave? And it's like, and there we go. Because and we find out about Bo. I figured as much the entire time, like piecing it together, like over the course of things. I was like, it had to be about a family member. I didn't even think like a sibling. Like I thought it was the uncle that kept getting referenced. I thought that's who got murdered. But it was like, in fact, it was actually CJ's brother, Bo, because Bo was about this life. He was the quote-unquote golden child, but 2 years ago, he left. Like, people are believed that he went back to China, but it's like, no, he died. And it's like, that's what was the cascading thing for all of this. And the fact is that CJ didn't want to talk about it because now we understand why. CJ thought it was an accident, so he knew some version of the truth, not all of it, though. So he was like, so I guess his parents told him at some point in time what happened to Bo, but we find out later on that they warped the story to make it seem like it was an accident that he died. And so it's like, oh, like, once again, we get the full story later on when Harry goes and visits Sean. You know, it's like, right, he wanted, you know, it's like, oh, I'm going to say goodbye. Like, the whole Vern thing is taken care of. And it's like, well, what do you want? He's like, the fact of the matter is, I know about Bo. Like, tell me the truth. And, you know, you had both Meg and Colin out there telling, like, Sean to stop. Like, don't do anything. But Sean confessed, he's like, we killed Bo. And he's like, we finally got the entire story. And I think it's so fascinating because, like, if you look at that scene, I think it does a really interesting thing of showcasing Percy's perspective back then. Because at the time they believed that Bo was skimming from them. It's like, oh, we got such little fish. It's because of Bo. They thought Bo was stealing fish from their net. But the truth be told is, it's like they weren't bringing in as much because there was the whole complicated thing of just like they were doing a whole bunch of overfishing. So there wasn't as much to catch. And yes, Bo caught some, and yeah, he had used their boat and stuff like that, but everything he caught was on his own terms because he wanted to build a future for his family because Lou had talked about it with Harry that like the permits, the Muldoons own all of them, and to actually be on the list to get a permit would take like 15 to 20 years just to get it. And so that's why like Bo was working as hard as he was because he's like, if I can work hard, I could get us these permits. And like, he's like, next year or so we'll be on, like, you know, that's what the restaurant and everything, like everything that his parents did was in his name. You know, is because it is what he wanted, you know? And CJ didn't want this life. Like, I think that's what makes it even harder. Because Bo, he's like, oh, it'd be sucky, like, if you did like something, you were terrible. He's like, oh, shut up, bro. But it's like, his bro did everything, not, you know, because this is what he wanted to, but he also wanted to build something for his family. He wanted something kind of like the Muldoons. It's kind of like, so that his brother could go off and do what he wanted to. Like, you know... That's why CJ also stuck around. It's like, because he had to fill that void now that his brother was gone. And, you know, he had to kind of step up and fill that, even though he wanted nothing to do with this. But the thing is, circling back to my point, the Muldoons were like, right, CJ, it's like, yeah, like, that's what you get for, like, hiring, like, outsiders and stuff like that. And then Percy was saying, yeah. And I'm like, because don't forget what M said. M made it, like... Percy was happy at one point because she was all about this. Like, she was a Muldoon through and through. She loved what she did. She was all about this family. That situation with Bo tarnished all of that. That's because that was so interesting to me because we never got to see that side of Percy. Like, the smallest glimpse we got of that was when we got M's side of things, where she was like, oh, when I saw Percy, she was happy, and then something happened, and then she just kind of like it broke her to some extent, right? So that's why I'm thinking, like, that's what I think is so fascinating, because like getting that glimpse of like, right, she was all about this, and she had that same perspective of like, oh yeah, like the same thing happened to another family when you hire an outsider and stuff like that. It was like, oh, like that's not the Percy we came to know, and now we kind of know why she changed so much. So Percy, Sean, as well as Colin went out on a boat, and you're like, right. Now you kind of understand why Percy has... Because we know Percy was there when what happened. Like, we'd seen it previously. Like, she was there when Bo died. Once again, we just didn't know at the time it was Bo. But she was there at that time. And, they confronted Bo about it. But he was trying to be like, no, like, guys, I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the boat. But they just assumed the worst. And he was like, oh, I hired you. Like, we helped you out. And he was like... With what? You're basically paying us minimum wage, and it sucks. Like, my family can't survive like that. You guys have all the permits. Like, what am I supposed to wait 15 years for my family to barely make it by while you guys, like, get to do whatever you want to, And it just led to an argument and shoving. And the thing is, I think Bo had, like, he was just tired, because I think it was just, like, him and his family probably had, as outsiders, they were already being pushed around. And I think just because I think Bo and CJ both share that. Like, I think they both have like anger in them that once they get started, they can't let go. I think because they already hinted at with CJ, but it seems like Bo kind of has that same temper too. But it's also like, once again, they were seen as outsiders, so they kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed until he finally snapped on them, because Sean kept pushing him and stuff like that. And during the tussle and everything, because he wouldn't stop, Percy's the one to shine. I'm like, now that's why this hits you even harder. It's not just that you were there and you recovered like this whole thing. It's like you actually killed him, and it broke you. And now like everything started spiraling from there. Like her dad got addicted to drugs, and she kind of blames herself for that too, because he hurt his shoulder trying to move Bo's body. And obviously for Percy's like, this isn't what she wanted. She just wanted to stop. And then we find out like they brought this home. Bo's parents were brought into it, and it's like Percy's like, I'm sorry, and just like Meg yells at her to get upstairs. It's like, how can we make this right? And Bo's mom wanted to go to, goes like, no, we have to go to the police. But it's like, but the dad's like, why would we? Do you think the Muldoons will actually pay? No one in this town is actually going to listen to us. If it's our word against the Muldoons, they could be able to spin it however they want to. And even if they do go down, they'll lose everything, but so will we, because we're so heavily tied. I mean, we work for them and stuff like that. So them suffering makes us suffer. At the very least, Bo wanted a better life, like all the things that he wanted, we can do this. But she's like, no, like, is that all his life is worth? And he's like, you really think so little of me that I think that's all our son is worth? We got to think about CJ, because if we don't do this, like, what are we going to do? Like, go back like home? It's like, we came here for this life, because Bo was aiming for the that good old classic American dream, and he wanted that for his family, And it's like, this is how we protect CJ by also continuing what Bo wanted, because the way the Muldoons paid is they gave up their biggest permit to the Lambs. But the problem is, like, the fishing situation is what it is. Like, no one, like, they don't have enough to get by with their other permits, because that was the biggest one. So any fishing they would have brought in, like, the returns were less and less, because their biggest one they gave to the Lambs. But also, like, the fishing situation was what it was. So... And once again, it now adds this perspective of, like, Percy was dealing with this heavy personal guilt on so many levels. Because, like I said, like, we got that little window into who Percy was before the whole Bo thing. And we see afterwards her entire perspective change when she met with M, and it changed everything. I'll bring up, I'm surprised we never dived deeper into those ladies. Like, I thought there would have been a deeper tie to them, but it seems like their thing is their own thing. They're kind of like hippie ladies. I guess, like, that's their thing. I thought M was a part of that, but it seems like M just, like, kind of took some of that and kind of applied it to herself. They kind of do their own thing. I guess that's all there really was to it. But I was like, I thought that would have been at least more involved in the case. It was like a one episode thing, and like I said, it slightly connects to the M thing, but that's about it. Other than that, like, because she was kind of going about things her own lane, her own way about, like, the lunar goddess stuff, But I just thought that would have circled back in some shape or form. It's like, no, when Harry saw them, but I guess there's some implication of that, because like I said, it's just like, that was kind of the tipping point to lead to M's story and what her connection was to Percy and what she kind of, helped Percy through. But finding out the truth about Bo, Sean wanted to turn himself in because he was like, that's why they turned to smuggling people, like, not smuggling, yes, smuggling, but also trafficking. Like, to them, they're doing the smuggling, they're not part of the trafficking, but it's like, because Colin was like, no, we're doing good, but Sean's like, no, we're not. We knew from the beginning those deals weren't good, but we didn't care. We tried to pretend like, no, we're helping people. We tried to justify it. It's like, no, we were a part of something terrible, but we just didn't want to ask questions. So it is like this thing, like I said, Bo's death sent a domino effect around that kind of led to everything, And that's the most heart-wrenching part of this, is that Percy took it upon herself. She's like, if I hadn't killed Bo, like, she felt like, she even says it later on, she poisoned her entire family because of it. The fact is that Sean ended up turning himself in, and obviously, Lou brings it up to the Lambs of like, right, they're not going to, the person in charge of all this isn't going to press charges against the Lambs for being part of the cover-up. And even, Mike even thanks, Lou. He's like, thank you, Lou, for doing this, and Lou's probably like, it's the least I can do, for like not seeing everything that was really going on here behind the scenes. This is supposed to be my town. And even Harry, tries to, it might not mean much, but he's, like he tried to tell them like Percy strived every day for the rest of her life to try and make up for what she did. That's why the woman that was with the whole Brandon situation she saw, that's why she was going so hard in the paint to save her, because she wanted to do some good. She at the very least save one person, because knowing like I said later on, like she explained, like they expressed in the episode, like how she felt so responsible for this. So she, like, to make up for the life she took, she wanted to give someone else their life back. Like, she wanted to save at least someone in all of this, make up for all that her family was a part of, And that's why she was going so hard into pain about trying to save that one particular woman, because this is someone I'm aware of. I can do something about. I can try and save her. I can try and make this right by telling the truth. But once again, sadly, Lou wasn't there. Josh was, when she ended up confessing everything to him about, well, probably not she didn't bring up the Bo stuff, just like all the other elements to it, like all the trafficking elements to it. When it's all said and done, like Harry, like now that everything's kind of out there in the open, Harry and Lou kind of say their goodbyes, and Lou's like, oh, you've taught me a lot, and don't be a stranger. And like Harry goes for a handshake, and then Lou comes and hugs him. I'm like, yeah, that's very good. I'm like, I'm glad Lou. Once again, like all the cops that have ever been involved in any of these shows have never been like bad guys. I'm glad that Lou turned out well, except for Josh, but I'm glad Lou ended up being a good guy. And I was like, yeah. And you see this even smile across Harry's face, because I almost think like, oh, I wonder, did Harry, did he make a friend after all of this? Like I'd like to believe that him and it's like, no, keeping up with Lou or something. I don't know, but also like Lou's definitely going to be a probably different cop going forward because of everything with Harry. It's like, you've helped us so much, But he goes to visit Meg afterwards, and Meg is like, what did you, now that I told you to stop, like, you could have stopped because you knew what this would do to my family. And it's like, oh, is the world a better place now that the truth's out there? And he's like, I'm not sure. Because even Harry's not going to lie and be like, the truth it's like, no. But his thing is seeking the truth. Yes, he was getting his own part out of this but he was trying to get justice for a person, because even he said, like, you asked me to go above and beyond. I even went to you first, but you told me to stop. And she's like, I told you to stop, because the moment you found out what was going to do my family. But he was like, I just thought I was getting justice for Percy. And even, Meg is like, I've been coming to this church for like 68 years, kind of like trying to get an answer, and I just haven't, about like kind of what direction to go in. And she's like, I haven't heard a fucking word. And Harry gave her, I wonder, did he, because we know the one that was on Bo's grave was given to CJ, but I'm wondering all the pieces that were part of, like, to all the people and the things that were important to Percy, like her rituals and stuff. I wonder, did he ever give those back to the individual people? At the very least, it's like, he gave that to her. It's like, you are always on your granddaughter's mind. Like, you are a part of that. Like this is a reminder of her. And Meg thinks about the night that Josh brought her home. And, like, Sean and Colin were telling her to keep her mouth shut, because it's like, right, if you tell your grandma, like, she's going to get sick again. You don't want that. And she's like, okay, what's going on? They covered up and be like, yeah, she's tripping about that Bo Lamb situation again. And she's looking in disgust at her uncle, like, wait, what do you? And so, and even Meg says a line of, we're still on this, and she's just like, this family is just poison. This family's effed up. And she's like, and once again, she takes it upon herself. She's like, I broke this family. I poisoned us. I ruined us when I killed Bo. Because she's like, none of this would happen if it wasn't for me. Because it's like, despite their trafficking being on them, she blames herself because, like, you guys are making up for you trying to cover from me. So if I had never, because Meg thought, like, no, I'm doing this because my granddaughter, she even explained it to the Lambs. It's like, she's so young, her entire future, her life will be like taken away from her. And so it's one of those things where now, with the full truth out there, Meg realizes now, like, fully now understands the weight that Percy was carrying. And it's like what she asked Percy to do, because Percy was like, Colin, like, you could make all these claims about finding your way back to God, but it's like, what about all this terrible stuff you're doing? He can justify by being like, I'm doing it for my family. And what about you, Dad? It's like, tell Grandma what you're doing in the garage, you know? And he was getting high because he had gotten addicted. A combination of what happened plus because feeling responsible of, like, right, like, I'm the one that, like, I can see my daughter's hurting, and this is because of me. That's why he even leaned into it more of, like, why it's like, yeah, like, you're the only one, Harry, that might not be guilty of playing any role in what led to Percy. But for her, it's like, she wanted to go to the police. She needed to. But her grandma wasn't listening. It's like, please, promise me you're not going to go to the police about anything. This is for you'll ruin everything for your family. The family business, me, your dad, your uncle, and that asking her to bury all of that. Now Meg feels so guilty because it's like, if I hadn't done that, like, she's already been feeling that way before, like, oh, how I handle things, the way Percy, you know, like, her new perspective on things, not wanting to overfish and kind of having a different perspective. And what did she do? She yelled at Percy. Like, we got that, like, was it last episode or the episode before last? Like, she yelled at Percy because it was like, you, like, oh, want to, like, spurn, like, the legacy that has been the Muldoons. It's like, oh, then don't live in his house or live in the room. Like, this way of living has supported everything in your life, and you want to spurn it now. So it is a situation of, you know, Harry went out to that cliff because he wanted to kind of say goodbye to Percy to some extent. And so he now pieces it all together. It's like, right, she couldn't live with what she had done. Like, her family asked her to bury it, and her own guilt ate her away. So she drank. She did drugs. She wanted to tell the truth to CJ, but she didn't. And she's like, in his head, she's like, and I made things worse. Like, I strung CJ along. And once again, that's why Mama Lamb got so mad when she saw Percy with CJ, because it's like, you already took one son from me, you're not going to take another one, because she was already leading him down a bad road, a bad path, like got him addicted to drugs and everything. And that's just because she was in so much pain. And that's why she was like, if I told you the truth, you'd hate me. Because it wasn't just her family covering up. It's the fact is, I killed your brother. You know, and now he knows that truth. And that's something I was wondering too. I was like, that's the whole aspect of Harry being like, I don't know. Because I thought maybe now that the truth is out there, that CJ would kind of be, him and his family would actually fall apart because of that truth of, like, knowing that, like, my brother's life paid for, like, the permit that we have. Like, you know, it's like, wait, you know, just probably like his mom's perspective of, like, wait, so that's all my brother's life was worth? Like, I can't believe you would do that. But she was like, we did it for you, for your future, you know? That doesn't make it any better for him, I'm sure. But when she tried to leave, Colin found her. Like, when she tried to have a new life in, what was it, Portland? Colin's the one that found her. And the reason why he did that is because, and even she was like, why didn't my family try to help? And Harry says, they thought they were. In their own way, they thought, like, bringing, like, because Colin thought, like, if he could get her in touch with God, that basically it, you know, because who knows at what point during that time they shifted over to that. Maybe when he was trying to help Percy through all that, maybe he hadn't maybe he hadn't found God again yet. So maybe at that time he was still on the good side of things, but because Percy was still trying. That was after she came back and she was trying to fill that void a little bit. But like I said, like none of them were really. They kind of had tunnel vision to an extent. Like they were just trying to like protect their family. They weren't willing to, but it wasn't enough for Percy. So like she, it's like she went to M and did all that stuff. And I there was that line, I'm going to butcher it, but it was like, she had basically had opened her eyes. She was kind of seeing everything happening all around her. And it's like, Harry was saying, like, you were getting there. Like, you were finally it's like, the hardest part is, like, having to finally look at yourself in the mirror. It's not the easiest thing. But he's like, if you, like, you are all on your way there, But, like, Bo is the person she kept seeing. Like, when she was flipping out about someone, but, like, it wasn't, like, Colin was there at work and who she was freaking out about, but like in the club or whatever, who she kept seeing was Bo. And it's like there was no one there on the cliff when she jumped. What she kept seeing was Bo, because for her it kept haunting her. Because she even said like everywhere she goes, it stayed with her, and especially knowing like her family, she's like, I broke my family because of this. I ruined us. I poisoned us by doing that, killing Bo, and just. She had nowhere else to turn to. It's like, who can I turn to in this situation? Because if I tell Lou the truth, I'd be hurting my family even more. And my family asked me to bury this for their sake. So she had nowhere else to turn to. She felt like she had nothing else to do. And so, and the thing is, like, she even says, like, that day I was meeting you by the water, he was thinking about the same thing. Like, he thought about it, like, when you watched the first episode, he was thinking about kind of, he was thinking about it after the whole Jamie thing. So it was kind of hard looking inwards. That's what he was thinking at the time. And then Percy's like, now? Like, basically, like, have you found another way? And he's like, yeah, I think I might have, And then she disappears because he's finally able to let go. Because it's like, right, like, he found some answers throughout all of this too, kind of what he was kind of going for, like maybe getting justice couldn't, just like what she was trying to do with they came to Bo, he was doing the same thing. Like their stories are, I mean, that's fantastic, like storytelling in my opinion. Like just realizing like even every time you already knew from the beginning there were parallels, like what he was trying to get from her. She was trying to fill some void inside of her just like he was, but the parallels ran even deeper. Him with Jamie was her Bo. I don't know at the end of the day which one of these shows, which one of these seasons has a more tragic ending. Because, like, the Jamie thing is sad because, like, well, Harry killed him and, like, had to carry that. But this one is just sad because, like, Percy's not alive anymore. No one, like, it sucks that, like, it ended up this way. And it's just, like, but, like, knowing that, like, despite everything, she spent every day trying to make things right, trying to find an answer, trying to be better, And, I think the beautiful tragedy of it is, I think Harry exposing the truth, everything Percy did, I think it mattered in the end. It did matter. Because we see Sean at the end, talking to police, but then we see Colin show up, because I think Colin was like, right, like, I think it finally hit him, like, like, right, I'm not going to let you take all the fall in all of this, because I am responsible as well, because I co-signed a lot of this, and, like, right, probably trying to, like, knowing what Percy was trying to do. And it's like, right, because they could also probably help in the grander scheme of things, like our connection, who we were setting these people up with, so that way they could help take down, like, probably help the Fed's case with the larger organization, so at the very least they could do that. You saw Meg go to M, because I think this way it's like, right, this helped out Percy, like Percy was able to find her answers, so I think Meg is willing to put in the work to try and, make things change on that front. So, but I think it also will help her get a little closer to Percy, understanding, like, what was in Percy's mind. And it's just like, her granddaughter was so far away from her because she wasn't the same girl anymore. And it's like, maybe Meg doesn't want to be the same person anymore. So, like, whereas the Muldoon legacy, it's falling, like, I think both of them are all finding their way forward and trying to do the right thing for, to make up for their mistakes, but also, like, to do right by Percy, And even CJ's with his parents. So, like, I think despite everything, now knowing the truth, it being out there, I think it did bring that family closer together, like being able to get some closure in everything, you know? And so them all being together like that. So, like, rather than it breaking their family apart, I think it brought them closer together. That's the thing of, like I said, like, I think despite everything, what Percy did, like, it's not like a thing of, like, oh, it didn't matter, like, what she did. It's like, no, her changes did matter, because by having Harry expose the truth of all that Percy was dealing with, all, like, I think it mattered. I think it changed a lot in that town. I think it changed people's life. I think in the end, exposing the truth was for the better, I think. And I think you see that in the little ways of just, like, that ending, you know? And I think this whole thing, it also, without even knowing it, she didn't know him. They had one conversation, but she stuck with him. And Percy, she helped Harry in the end too. But like I said, it's still, like, heartbreaking to know her story was that was. But I think that her life still mattered because she tried to make up for those mistakes. And I think in the end, she did. She did make up for it. I mean, that's just my perspective on it. Maybe in the process, she saved so many more lives than she was even intending to. You know, I mean, maybe the whole intention was trying to save her family from their mistakes. I mean, that's what even way deeper on Sean. It's like when his daughter needed him, he chose to stay silent, and that's why the guilt ate him alive, even more so than anyone, because it's like, yeah, he tried to get his daughter a fresh start. He knew she needed to be away from all this. The guilt was weighing on her, so he tried to get her out of this, but Colin and his mom dragged her back, you know, to all of this. Harry did try to call Sonia, but he only got her machine, so that was, like, earlier before, I think, that was before he ended up having this conversation with, like, Percy in his head, but, so who knows where things kind of sit on that front. Like, now that he's kind of found that way forward now, I wonder what does that mean for him and Sonia. Like, is he willing to give it another shot, or is he going to find, or would that be too closely tied to the Jamie thing of, like, maybe he feels like it's for the best that I didn't get in contact with you. And I think Harry finally, like, was like, her kind of disappearing is symbolic of, like, yeah, she's kind of done what she needed to do, and he doesn't need to hold on to her anymore. Like, finally just, like, let her go. He got the truth, like, everything's checked out, and he kind of got what he needed from it as well. And I think it's just about Harry finding his way forward. So I think, like I said, it's heartbreaking, because every season, like, had its heartbreaking elements to it, even in their respective finales. But I think, just like there's always, like, there's some silver lining, but it's still a very, like, tragic ending regardless. Like, I mean, the whole predication on most of these stories are based on a tragedy anyway. But I think in this particular, I don't know, like, it hits hard, you know? And I think, especially for this to be the end, you know? But I think it is a beautiful ending regardless, you know, like I said, but it's still just like there's some silver lining to it, you know? That and I think it'd be interesting to know where Harry would go from here, but I think it's a perfect spot to end things. Whether that was, like, it doesn't seem like that was intentionally meant to be like, oh, this was meant to be the series finale, but the fact of the matter is, even as a series finale, it serves so beautifully. Obviously, it is still that thing of, you would want at least one more season, because you would want to know where Harry would go from here, like what the next case would do, like every case prior affects the new case. So the whole thing with Jamie is what affected him so heavily to dive into this Percy thing. But, like, who will Harry be going forward? And maybe part of me is almost like, I'm conflicted, because I would want one more season just to see what the next case would be, like, what that would be. But also at the same time, I'm like, I'm honestly fine with this being the end. Like I said, whether I'd want another season or not would be predicated on how this series wraps up and where Harry is at the end of it all. And I'm like, knowing, like, his journey, kind of, like, he has, like, you know, he kind of was able to kind of finally find another way forward, that he is kind of, you know, not taking the same path as, I kind of think that's also, like, the beautiful parallel too of, like, he was thinking about it before he met Percy actually did it, and working this case prevented him from going down that route. And even at the end here, he's realizing, like, no, I think I have found another way forward, you know. So whether he goes back to being a cop, you know, does he go back to Sonia? Like, some of those questions, I'd be curious, you know, once again, what the next case would be. I feel like you would need, like, maybe one more season to, you know, but I also think, like, it's beautiful enough in its own right that it's that's a damn good ending. Like, that's a damn good case to go out on and a damn good way to like leave Harry. It still leaves you with questions, but there's going to be plenty of series that are going to leave you with questions. So that's why I'm a little conflicted on whether or not I would want another season or not. So based on what I've looked up, it's still up in the air, like whether or not like it's like would the show come back for a season 5, because it does seem like the creators had like some inklings and some ideas about a season 5. Because I thought it was interesting, the words I was reading directly were like essentially that there were plans to potentially have the series be reconstructed a little bit. So that's what I'm so curious about. Like, does that mean you wouldn't be following Harry anymore? Would it be like a different detective? Like, would the anthology shift going forward? That's why I'm feel like, because there's still like bits and pieces of Harry's past that we've never really gone over. I mean, you know, where him and his family fully stands now, like after season 3. Because him and his daughter weren't really in the best place, especially when it came to his grandson and everything, how he handled a lot of stuff last season. So some of those questions, you know, I'd be curious about. But, you know, once again, it's that thing of like, well, the show does have a good enough following and it is well received, so like critically and stuff. So would it be a Netflix thing? Like I said, that's where I'm kind of conflicted, because I'm like, I don't know if I'd want another season or not. Like, I think this was a beautiful ending, but I'm like, but that's also the thing of like, you never know. Like, recent example, like Lucifer, like that was supposed to, once again, I'm just going on based on what the showrunner said, and I could be misremembering, but if I remember correctly, they were saying like Netflix offered them a 6th and final season, and they were like, no, we wanted to originally end with 5, but we got the amazing 6th season. I'm like, I'm glad we got that season. Like, you know, they obviously how season 5 would have played out would have been different, obviously, but once again, this wasn't written to be a series finale, but every season finale can be written as a way to be a series finale because this show is the anthology that it is. But I'm glad that this kind of acted as like a part 2 to season 3. Like, I mean, once again, these stories are always continuations because everything is a continuation. You know, I guess at the heart of it, it's a character piece on Harry as the central character, as you've got this big mystery trying to understand the motivations behind the things that have gone on. But at the end of the day, I don't know if I'd want a season 5. And if they did bring it back, I'd be happy about it. But I'd want it to probably be the last season, because I think, like I said, I'm just conflicted. That's why I'd love to get to know your thoughts. Like, would you want a season 5? This whole conversation, I might just like make this a whole video in itself of kind of discussing that. But I think I kind of made all my points here. And maybe I'll put them in a video format. Maybe I'll just leave it in this review. But I'd love to know what you're thinking. Did you love the series finale? Did you not? Did you like it? Because I know like some people apparently were not too thrilled about the like season 3 storyline. Some people liked it. I really liked it, but it seems like not everyone else enjoyed that. So I understand, you know. So I'm curious like how people felt about this one, and especially, you know, this was not intended to be the final season, but it ended up being the final season. Are you okay with that? Would you want more, or do you want it? You think it ends here perfectly? Like, let me know. Like, are you conflicted like I am, or like I said, I'm leaning more towards I'm glad. I feel like this is a good ending, like a good place to stop. You know, wasn't 100% intended, but interestingly enough, it worked out enough, you know. But, you know, let me know your thoughts. I'd be so curious to hear your perspectives on this. But if this is the end, if there's never another bit of the center, I mean, not unless they go down like the Ray Donovan route and like just made a movie to kind of act as a little bit of an epilogue in some shape or form, or just like maybe half of a new season, or just a full-blown new season. I mean, a season's only 8 episodes, so if this was like a Netflix thing, it'd fit perfectly with their programming and stuff like that. Tangents and all that aside. If this is the end all be all, if we never get any more center, I might as well say it here and now, like, because this is where things currently stand, that thank you to everyone from in front of to behind the cameras, behind, you know, everyone that was involved with this production in any shape or form. Thank you for bringing an amazing series that told very compelling and amazing, like, you know, I am someone who enjoys crime dramas and mysteries, and this show's just been fantastic. Once again, it is a heart-wrenching series, story after story, that once again, there's some silver linings, but there's still just this tragedy. But the silver linings kind of, but I guess it's like, that's kind of like life in itself. Like, there's just some things of like, there's complexities to it, and you have a character like Harry who is so complex, who sees these cases in a way that no one else does, and he pulls himself in with everyone, whether it is, you know, a Cora, a Julian, a Jamie, or a Percy, that he pulls himself like into this, like he makes them a part of him, you know. So it's a, once again, just as a whole, it's just this beautifully tragic series of stories, and I just think it's a, which is so weird to be like, oh, it's a wonderful show. You know, it's kind of a downer show, but there is this hope to it that I think is a very important element, that it isn't all like dour, that there is this glimmer of hope. And I just think it's a fantastic show, and I wish everyone involved the best going forward with their future endeavors, whether that involves more Center in the future, if possible, or just future projects, you know. So, but I think I'm gonna, you know, shut my mouth and end things here. But really, that's all I'm gonna talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.